All right, thank you all for waiting. Again, I'm a firm believer in the 5-minute rule, so we'll go ahead and get this kicked off. Again, for those who weren't here on earlier, thank you for joining us today. The webinar we'll be covering will be on the launch of our new outdoor 5G product. Again, if you guys have any questions, we'll be taking those at the end of the webinar during the Q&A session. My name is Kenneth Hunter. I'm the VP of Sales for the North American and South American division of InHand Networks. And joining me today also will be from our technical team, Godwin Way, one of our product managers. Hello, Godwin.
Hey, nice to meet you, everyone.
Like I said, he'll be my co-host for today and also able to answer any technical questions you guys have toward the end. So again, thank you for joining us, and let's get this kicked off. As far as the agenda goes, we'll just touch on a few things in this webinar about our new outdoor product. We'll talk about the target markets as kind of an overview. We'll give a product overview. We'll talk about the product's features and some of the applications that we've seen with the product and fit into its market space. And then we'll also talk about some of the part numbers and then what to expect as far as how it's boxing and the equipment itself. So the target markets. So an outdoor 5G unit. Some people will hear this equipment referred to as a 5G adapter. They think of it more along the lines of a connectivity solution rather than comparing it to like a traditional router or firewall or VPN type solution. So traditionally with this type of target market, small and medium-sized businesses, think retail chains, fast food stores, pharmacies, think branch. And when we talk about SMB, it doesn't have to mean the company itself, but more the IT requirements of the branch itself. And then also, small office, home office, some mid-size offices, and again, where you want to bring in that 5G connectivity. So when I talk about the markets, I'll talk about some of the problems that are facing some of these applications, some of these target markets. For the retail side of the house, for those branch chain stores, where you're looking at cashier systems, credit card readers, or posts, right? Cameras, kiosks, signage. I mean, there's a plethora of stuff that goes into branch chain stores. So the three primary problem sets we usually run into from a IT and networking standpoint is one, the ability to rapidly deploy, a store network. So that could be you're opening a new store and you're waiting on fiber, right? You're waiting on connectivity, or maybe you're trying to just deploy without fiber, without cable. I know in the past it's kind of a cornerstone, but now with the speeds that you get from 5G, you can very easily use it as a primary WAN for your source, or you can use it as a very large pipeline for failover. You can use it in SD-WAN solutions to extend and increase your bandwidth. But obviously, anyone who's dealt with IT deployments knows that setting up that first network, whether it's running wires, setting up wireless, the installations and the time can take it can cause a lot of problems and delays, and especially if you're having to wait for a cable provider to do a localized install where it isn't existing. So time is money and time is stress, depending on how you look at it. The second is multi-terminal networking. Again, what does that mean? Well, more or less, the thing is, for a retail store chain, the amount of connected equipment that you see today versus 30 years ago is significant. Okay. Again, not only are you looking at, cameras that might not just be on a closed loop, but might actually be tying out to another database or a corporate entity somewhere, your credit card readers, a lot of the phone lines. I hope you're all off of POTS, nothing wrong with RJ11, but it's going the wayside. So now you have to deal with your voice traffic going over the internet. How do you manage that? How do you deploy it? There's so much more stuff that's in a connected retail chain, even if it's a small branch. So again, how do you provide quality network service for the customers, for the staff, for the equipment that's involved, with all this new complexity of more connected equipment, more connected people. And last is stability and reliability. Again, just because you have a cable line, doesn't mean that your network's never going to go down, right? And every time that your network does go down, how's that going to impact your business? right? How is that going to impact your customer experience through the ability to buy, or your paid advertisers, or whatever else is tied into it? These are all problems and questions that have to be asked for, a retail store chain. And this is some of the places I'll get into later that the ODU will help fit into filling that bill. Also, enterprise branches, while we're on the topic. Again, convenient corporate office networks, it all gets back to the same thing. How do you quickly deploy a network, right? And then from a network management perspective, because now we're talking about an office, right? Usually in the world of IT, you can have fast and unsecured or unmanaged, or you can have very secure and very well managed, but you give up speed. So how can you deal with that balance to quickly deploy, for a corporate office for that type of network? How do you balance, getting it out there quickly, but also, not giving up the ability to provide good network management, the ability to provide security, right? Increasing business applications. 30 years ago, most of your network needs would be pretty predictable. It's all in the office. But now we have to take into account the additional bandwidth that's being required at offices, the different applications that are happening. Everything's tied to the cloud now. It's no longer being, hard servers setting in localized areas, connected over copper. You're having to deal with all these mobile conferencing, hybrid work, remote work. How does that impact the resources you have locally? How does that impact your cloud resources? And then, how do you get the additional bandwidth that you're going to need to support that? And then lastly, more network access requirements. Again, with more connections needing to happen, how do you prevent that network from being interrupted? How do you decrease its, the group efficiencies? How do you balance with the complexity that all this additional access, both locally and remotely, needs to happen? So again, for us, we see a lot of that coming from the ability to bring in, additional bandwidth, faster deployable primary WANs, and a really 5G. 5G is bringing a lot of new stuff to the branch and the chain industries and to a lot of those small branch offices. So I've kind of talked about some of the problem sets. I've talked about some of the stuff. So before I get into how we're solving those, I'll give you just a little bit of breakdown about some of our portfolios so you can kind of understand where the outdoor unit fits in. From InHand's current portfolio, we kind of break things down into a few categories: enterprise and IT. So again, these are like cloud plus edge solutions, like our 805 5G SD-WAN router, the outdoor unit that we're providing, this ODU, right? These really are targeted and built around enterprise IT customers. They're about getting fast speeds, much more complex management from the back end and from a platform standpoint, and the ability to really control that experience and to do kind of that zero touch from a configuration standpoint. Additionally, we have what we consider the developer tier, which is all about programmable gateways, think Docker, Python environments, or just straight up industrial computers that have Linux or Android that you could just go program and load stuff on. Our routers and vehicle series, which is where we get into our industrial cellular routers, those IR series, and vehicle gateways, vehicle telematics, high-speed vehicle networking, emergency services, SLED, that kind of stuff. And then more recently, something that's kind of a little newer for us, are traditional, more connectivity type products. So think of like portable mobile routers, and then they're coming very soon, some of our fixed wireless access equipment. So since I mentioned that the ODU falls within that edge and cloud for IT and enterprise, I'll touch base on that just 1 minute before we actually dive into, what are the specifications on the ODU? What does it come with? So when I talk about cloud and edge, all the products that you see on this slide, the ones that are not grayed out are actually currently available. The outdoor unit, our 805, and then for Europe and APAC, we have the ER605 series. These products are cloud managed. So you use the in-cloud platform, you do all your configurations there. It's built with the intention of promoting lifecycle management, very, very deep network visibility, and the ability to kind of understand what's actually happening on the applications that are, floating and pushing data through on the devices. So, it's probably one of the best platforms that I've seen at the company so far, and it will allow you to do those zero touch deployments. And from a network management perspective, as we talk about more of a enterprise office, store and chain. The IT management will have the ability to set up all the configurations and firmware and, set it up in groups and not really touch it, kind of automate most of the process, and to get a much deeper dive and understanding actually what's happening on their equipment. So the ODU 2000 series. Ken, you told me about the market. You told me about your product portfolio as far as a generalized method. You told me a little bit about how the cloud managed platform is a big proponent of this solution. Now tell me about the equipment, right? So the ODU itself is an outdoor 5G WAN. That's its primary focus, its primary function. It's all about speed. It has, I believe, a newer Gen 16 5G module in it. So, compared to any older 5G equipment that's been certified by us or competitors over the last few years, you're going to see your highest level of speed and performance coming out of this because it has a newer 5G chipset in it. So, we talk about the 5G speeds, going up to 4.7 gigabytes down and 1.25 gigabytes up. And, this chipset will allow you to utilize the largest amount of that you're going to get based on your coverage in your region. We talk about the firewall throughput. Again, as most people know, when you start running data and traffic through a firewall, if that's a function that you're going to utilize, it can decrease speeds, but with ODU, you're still looking at least 2 gigabytes of speed if you're running it through its firewall rather than using like a Palo Alto or an additional firewall device. 2.5 gigabyte Ethernet ports, one WAN, one LAN, and one of them's PoE. You power the device by connecting to PoE, and the device comes with a PoE injector as well. So if the rack or switch or whatever you're connecting to inside of the building doesn't have PoE, again, it has a PoE injector with it. And again, the 2.5 gigabytes will allow you to take all that speed you're pulling in from the 5G network and keep your speed coming down inside your facility. It also gives you the ability to do failover. So that way, if you wanted to run in from the outside and back down, you can do that as well. Firewall features we mentioned, anti-DDoS, access control list, pretty standard functions and features. One thing that I do enjoy about the ODU that's I think unique compared to some of the other outdoor 5G products is we use Omni antennas. So it's not, you don't have to take the time like some of the vendors and make sure it's directionally pointed at a tower because you have directional antennas internally in the device. I could see some benefits to that, but from a deployment standpoint, it definitely sounds like something that could add a lot of complexity for an installation. Another interesting feature you'll find about it is we actually have 6 5G antennas on it. Most 5G products you see, you'll find come with 4 antennas. Ours has 4 MIMO antennas, and then for 5G, and it also has 2 dedicated ones that are specifically just for that mid and high band frequencies. So that way, again, when you have a 16 gen chipset, you want to be able to get as much speed as you can. So having 2 dedicated antennas just exclusively for those higher frequencies is going to provide a lot of benefits and additional speed. It's an outdoor unit. I don't have to beat that dead horse. It's IP67. It also has GPS since it's an outdoor unit. If you have multiple ones deployed within a certain city or block, you want to be able to find the correct units. So GPS is added there. Comes with wall and pole mount, so that way you can mount it to whatever you need to, side of a building, pole on the top. And then, as I mentioned before, it is intended for cloud deployment management. As far as the product, what's it look like? Again, just a few pictures so you can see some angles. I hate presentations where they show you the same picture and you can't kind of get a feel for it. It's roughly, if I recall, it's around, I think, 14 inches in length, about 8.6 inches in width, so just a little shy of 9 inches, and then it's about 2.8 inches in thickness or in depth. All right, now that you've seen the product, you've seen some of the rundown of the feature sets, we'll get in a little bit to what are the features and why would I use something like this. So number one and foremost, it's a 5G device. Yes, it's outdoor equipment, but its primary purpose is to provide 5G. As I mentioned, a lot of those problem sets, the ability to bring, those faster download, upload speeds, are a big proponent of a lot of businesses' problem sets in deploying faster networks, adding additional bandwidth, incorporating into different solutions like SD-WAN. So they have those multiple WAN sources to choose and move data through. All of that comes back to one thing and one thing only, which is, 5G. Again, our device supports both standalone and non-standalone networks. So we support all the type of tower and software deployments for 5G right now within the realm of the sub 6 gigahertz. So this is not a millimeter wave product. I'll put that out right now. Additionally, it has a Cat19 failover. So if it is deployed in an area where there is no 5G or where the 5G is very intermittent, right, you still have the ability to fall back onto the LTE network. All right, it's agile and robust. What does that mean? Again, you have multiple Ethernet options. You have Wi-Fi actually built into the device for troubleshooting. As I mentioned before, you have those two Ethernet, so not only can you provide data down, but you can also do failover. And then it has multiple SIM cards in it as well. So that way you can have a couple of networks. It's an outdoor unit. Again, not going to beat that dead horse, but again, IP67, snow, rain. I believe it has TNC antenna connectors. Or correct me on that, Godwin. You're the technical expert. TNC, TCN.
I believe it's called end connectors.
The connectors for the antennas. Anyway, much appreciated, Godwin.
Yeah, correct. Sorry, it's end connectors. Yeah.
End connectors. Thank you. So instead of traditional SMA, which will not do well outside, these are very, very reliable. They'll withstand the wind. They'll withstand the rain. And again, the product has if I didn't mention it before, the product comes with a 3-year warranty. So again, it's built to go outdoors and it's built to last. Worry-free connectivity. Again, you can do wired with a cellular failover. You can do cellular as a primary. The dual SIM cards will enable, the multi-carrier options. We also have an optional part number with an eSIM if you want to simplify on how you deploy it. And again, I mentioned multi-layer link detection, so it can automatically detect and fail over between the different WANs.
Sorry, Ken, you were right. It was TNC connectors. Sorry.
TNC. All right.
There you go.
TNC connectors. I do like the sound N connector though. It's not like we put N on most of our product line.
Yeah.
And then, as I mentioned before, the benefits of the cloud platform, which it's tied to, in cloud. See there, we get that N again, right? All puns are in hand and intended. Zero touch deployment. So, like I mentioned earlier, you can go in before you ever receive the device, and you can do all your configurations for your groups or for the individual equipment. And as soon as it connects to the internet, it'll pull down all the firmware configurations, firewall settings, everything it needs will come down from the cloud. So that way you're not actually having to touch the device to do localized configurations. You can configure it locally if you want, but with the platform, you would definitely be missing out on most of the features. Because I'm going to tell you right now, going on to NConnect's platform, you can have everything done as soon as you get the serial and the MAC address for the device. You can have everything set up ahead of time. And again, the nCloud platform is our unified device management platform. It's very easy to use. It's graphical. If you're deploying out more than one device, it's highly recommended. The ODU comes with a year of free nCloud license built into it. And if you decide that you don't want to use it, you don't have to. We don't brick any of our hardware. We don't take any of the features away. If you don't want to use the platform, you don't have to. But coming from a network engineering background before I found myself on more of a sales business side, I'll tell you that it's worth every penny. And additionally, it has a mobile app. So not only can you get your alerts, do all your monitoring, but you can also do your configurations. And if you're locally, you needed to connect to the device to troubleshoot, you can just scan the QR code on the device with the app, and it will automatically connect your connect your phone to the device, so that way you could troubleshoot it locally or collect its data and push it to the platform if you hadn't already loaded it. All right, let's talk about the applications just for a minute. I talked about some of the market's needs. So where does the ODU really fall and fit into? And then, like, give me some details, Ken. What specifically do you mean by that? Again, convenience stores, fast food, retail chains, pop-up stores, hotel chains, education training, small home and office, remote offices, finance branches, government offices. These are all some simple applications as far as they fit. Now, usually what I tell people, you say, well, Ken, when do I know when I need an ODU, right? You have the 805. When would I want to use the outdoor unit, and what's the benefits to that? Well, the benefits to using the outdoor unit is, again, by having the equipment outside and you're just using Ethernet to bring the connectivity inside into your existing IT infrastructure, you're not having to worry about any type of bandwidth loss by, say, putting an antenna outside, right? Because the router is abutted inside the product against the antennas, right? So it's all about performance. It's all about getting as much speed as you possibly can. With that said, this first application of always online network, a very traditional application that you'll find is actually, let's take, for example, a Rite Aid, right? We're looking at a pharmacy. I guarantee you, if you walk in the back of Rite Aid, you go into the employees only, and you move quickly, so you don't get thrown out first, and you start opening closet doors behind, you're going to find an IT closet, right? A lot of these chain stores already have existing IT infrastructure. So they're going to have a router. They'll probably have an access point, maybe from Ubiquity, maybe from Meraki, could be from anyone, right? And in this instance, if they wanted to add that redundancy, right? If they wanted to bring and add additional bandwidth and speed, or have a big cellular failover pipeline, that's where the ODU fits in well, because they don't need tons of routing features. They just need they just need as much speed as they can bring to bear to add into their existing IT infrastructure. So again, in this use case for this enterprise office, they already have IT equipment deployed within the facility, and they just want to add that redundancy, that backup, or that bandwidth upgrade. Because let's be honest, if you're already using the fiber or the copper and you want to bring in another one, that is not a cheap process, and it is not a fast process. So again, okay, within the branch, and a lot of branches, you'll find that they have existing IT infrastructure, right? But again, it might all be localized, right? They might just have a network switch, maybe a Cisco switch. They have a bunch of stuff connected, locally to the switch. It might be a layer 3 switch, and they might be, connecting that with a VPN back to the more of a hub for all the branches at the franchise. But it's, in this type of instance, they might actually want to provide, cellular as their primary, right? If they don't have an existing cable line, or if they want to save money and deploy, with a fixed wireless access data plan, a BI plan, there's very good pricing, there's very good coverage, there's very good speed. So the ability to, walk in and take out that, that 50 or 100 megabyte line that the cable company is charging them an excessive amount of money on, they could drop in, an outdoor unit, which would provide them a significantly larger pool of bandwidth, for a much more comparable price. And again, in this instance, they already have some existing IT infrastructure. So if you're seeing this theme where there's existing IT infrastructure, that's where the ODU really fits in, because then you're not focusing on like, well, I need an 805 for SD-WAN features. I need an 805, or I need another type of product to provide all these routing functionalities. The ODU is about, I need to bring in a lot of speed, and that's my primary focus. So again, in this instance, adding that outside, right, is going to provide that significant boost of speed, so they could use it as a primary source of internet utilizing 5G. And then again, a very similar instance to what I just described, if you were going to quickly build a new enterprise network, I would even extend that out to say not just like an enterprise network, but like an office enterprise network. But I would say a pop-up retail chain, or a new retail store that's going in, right? So you need to get it up as quickly as possible. Maybe you're going to bring in and install all the additional equipment like we talked about before. You're going to bring in your Cisco router, you're going to bring in your Ubiquiti APs, you're going to bring in all this equipment, you're going to wire the facility and have it all set up, and everything's going to be great. But you don't want to delay your deployment of your new office, your new branch by 3 to 6 months. So in this instance, you could install an ODU providing a very large pipe, and then utilize an AP to then provide that Wi-Fi and to quickly connect things even before you have a bunch of wiring done. And the last one I'll add in is actually a solution that we've seen some people asking us before. In North America, we haven't currently provided any cellular routers that have dual cellular modules in them. So the ability to run 2 cellular networks, not as a failover, but simultaneously for aggregated bandwidth and speed. So because I've had a few people ask about that, we decided to add in this application note, which for this one was focused around a chain branch, and to add not just additional redundancy per se, but to really beef up the amount of speed that they could get on top of that redundancy. So if you deploy out an ER805, in a new chain that doesn't have existing IT infrastructure, you can also deploy an ODU with it. And the 805 of the nCloud will allow you to manage both devices and aggregate that bandwidth. So then instead of you just having one 5G pipe, right, with a failover to another, you could be utilizing 2 at the same time. All right. With that said, Godwin's going to walk you guys through the part numbers and what to expect.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, so currently we only have the ODU 2022 NAVA, which is the Verizon and AT&T version. So this one will support all of your common Verizon AT&T bands, and then you can see the code over there if you want to order it. And then we have the ODU 2002 NATM, which is for T-Mobile. So this would be same thing, 5G sub-6, but for T-Mobile bands. Samples are estimated in 2023 July, so next month. So yeah, samples first, and then after that, a few more months for production. And then ODU 2022 EUNR, that's for Europe, Australia, and Asia as well. So that will be even later. So currently, there's not too much demand for that. So mostly focus on North America and Verizon for now.
And I'll throw up there, because my biz dev guy, Mr. Brian Buckley, he always hounds me to remind people of this. Whether it's the ODU product, our in-router series, our edge router series, the naming infrastructure, there's a few little cheats in here for you to remember, and they're pretty easy. Normally, the last digit of a number on a product series will tell you how many Ethernet or primary interfaces it has. As you notice, the ODU 2002 means it has 2 Ethernet. And then if you look in the actual naming system, NAVA, North America, Verizon, AT&T. So that's the breakdown. The other North American, T-Mobile. So just a couple little cheats to help people remember things easier.
Yep. Yeah. So here's a list of all of the different product accessories. So the standard accessories are on the left. So you can see it comes with the 5G antennas, MIMO antennas, Wi-Fi, GNS, Ethernet cable. All of them will come with a PoE adapter, which is also connected to the AC cord. And then mounting bracket, mounting plate. Ken, does it come with both, or is it one or the other?
It comes with an option for both. So the mounting plate allows the device to connect to either the wall, to either connect to the wall mount or to the pole mount.
Oh, okay.
We'll see it in the next picture.
So the bottom one is the pole mount. So you could have either the mounting bracket or the pole mount. And then on the right would be your optional accessories. Mostly you can see the ODU 50 feet, ODU 100 feet, and ODU 200 feet kit. So that's basically just depends on how long you need to stretch the other cables for.
And just to provide a little clarity on that, again, as Godwin talked about, the stuff on the left with the part codes, it's what actually comes with the equipment. So as part of the price when you buy it, that's what's included. There's no additional cost to it. And the stuff on the right are installation kits. It's a way for InHand to help control the installation experience, so it's the same every time. And also, a big complaint that was provided to us about some of these type of outdoor installation kits before we ever built the product was, I wish a manufacturer would offer most of the stuff that you need for install, because apparently it's pretty commonplace that someone would order an ODU from, another vendor, and then they would go through maybe like a Cenex or an Ingram or through a large distribution house. And by the time they ordered the surge protector, the grounding wire, the shielded Cat6 Ethernet cable, the connectors, your lugs, like all the components they needed, they get a call, hey, your equipment's arrived, roll the installers. And anyone who's worked with an installer knows it's not cheap. It's not cheap to roll trucks. The truck rolls, and then they get there and find out, well, yeah, my outdoor cellular router is there, but I'm missing my grounding wire, or I'm missing the locking lugs, right? Or I don't have the equipment I need to install. So then they end up having to pay to have them come out again another time for installation. So when you order these extra optional accessory kits, you can have the ability to have them put in a single box that includes the ODU and that kit. So it all ships together at the same time. So you don't have to worry about those bad truck rolls.
All right, yeah, so here are the two different mounting options. So we have the wall mount. So basically, like we said, it's you have the little bracket that you connect to the back of the ODU, and then that helps it connect to either the wall mount, or then you have the pole mount, which just has like a two sort of like metal, what do you even call those? Like, I guess like two metal belts that basically secure it onto the pole.
And additionally, I know there was an update given here from one of our other product managers that missing from this documentation right here, we would also be including for the pole mount an actual fixed metal brace. So it's not just the metal brackets, if I recall right, Godwin?
Yes. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so this is basically how everything is packaged. You could sort of just look through the slide if you want to, but you can see on the very bottom all the antennas, AC adapters, any sort of cabling, and then on the left you would have your basically your wall mount, and then at the very top you would have your ODU. Yeah, so yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Awesome. Thank you, Godwin. So with that said, that's just a little bit about the new product. Again, remember the cheats to remember: 5G, need for high speeds, right? High bandwidth, whether it's primary or failover. And probably 8 out of 10 times it's intended to go into locations and installations that have existing IT infrastructure to either add a new primary WAN utilizing the 5G, a high speed failover WAN, right? Or a secondary 5G WAN that can function in an SD-WAN solution to either provide additional bandwidth or to provide a new segmented WAN where you can push out certain types of traffic. So that's really where the ODU fits in. If they don't have existing IT infrastructure, if the installation or site, doesn't need as much speed, right? Then that's really where the 805 falls in, or wherever they would need those additional routing and IT functions, right? Or more of the SD-WAN functions on our equipment rather than on a software side. That's where your 805 goes, and then the ODU is all about speed and providing additional bandwidth to existing IT infrastructure. With that said, we'll jump over to the Q&A. It looks like we have quite a few questions.
Okay, yeah, I'll sort of read through them. Okay, so Reza has a question. Do you offer MSN on premise or over private VPN? If yes, what's the cost if it is not free? So I'm guessing you're talking about our nCloud solution. So it is over, I wouldn't call it private VPN, but it's over AWS. So we sort of have two different models. Ken, if you want to talk a little about that.
Yeah, so from the in-cloud, we do have two licensing currently. The standard license has an MSRP of essentially $30 a year, and it's included in the product. So when you buy it, it already has a year license of the essential, and it covers 90% of the current functionality. The the professional license we offer, which I believe is around 180. The only primary difference with it as of today is it provides two separate VPN functions that are integrated into the platform on AWS. One is called InConnector. That is an open VPN solution. That is the server, everything's set up and maintained by InHand on AWS here locally. Because AWS has a lot of their data centers in Northern Virginia, Maryland. And then also it has a traditional hub and spoke VPN solution like you normally find in your traditionally in your corporate networks. So in the future, we're going to add additional features into the professional license, like deep packet inspection for enhanced security, deep packet inspection for more enhanced QS, and actual like traffic shaping. But that's a in the future. For right now, if you don't need a VPN built into the platform, you have your own VPN, you have your own private network. You don't need a VPN to access stuff connected to the routers themselves, like through the network, then the essential license is all you need.
Yeah, and another thing to add is if you don't want to have any sort of cloud solution, our device also works as a standalone, so you can actually cut out the cost of using our portal at all too, if that's something that if cost is an issue.
Yeah, after a year, because again, it's a license is already built into any of our new products. If you go, you know what, the platform was nice, but I don't really need it. We don't brick any of our hardware. We don't take the features away. And you can still log into the platform. It just won't update the data on the device. So anytime that you wanted to renew it, you could. It's there. You don't have to go through a cumbersome, well, I got to call this number and reach out to InHand and reset everything. It's not so much.
Yeah.
Or if you have a troublesome location, you could keep that one on license, right? Because if you're in an area that needs a lot of support, locally people like to mess with the equipment, a lot of changes are made. You can leave a license on that one, but then another site you might say it never goes down, never has a problem, and doesn't need another license, right? You don't need the additional support or visibility. You can do that too. So
yep, very flexible. Okay, next Reza also said, does any of your products support load balancing? Which units support multiple SIMs for redundancy? So currently, the only ones that work with load balancing off the top of my head are the IR302, ER805, as well as the ODU. And all of our devices, except for maybe the VT320 is too. Yeah, so all of our devices have dual SIM enabled. For redundancy purposes. Okay, and then the next question was also from Reza, which products support 600 to 6,000 millihertz bands? So you can see most of the bands that we support on our website, so inhandnetworks.com, and then from there, when you go to the ordering guide, it'll show you sort of which bands and which frequencies work with that router or that specific module that's using. I don't think there's one that supports that, like the whole range. But yeah, you could take a look, and then if you have any specific questions, always reach out to InHand or your sales rep if you have one. Anonymous said, Verizon Sub-6 N77 5G, I assume. Yes, so you're correct. Yeah, so we are certified for Sub-6, so NSA.
Sub-6, C-band.
Yeah.
You can, it's certified for C-band on Verizon, so if you want to activate it on 5 GPI plans, it's not just a traditional nationwide 5G, and it's one of the reasons we support standalone and non-standalone towers and base stations.
Yeah. Next, Reza said, SMA is standard. Any reason you're using TNC connectors? So the antennas that we have, they're a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger, sort of engineered to make it so that it doesn't move too much, and it's just sort of like a better connection, I would say. And then also, obviously, we have to have a certain level of waterproofing, dust proofing, shock resistance. So
it's outdoor equipment, and On
Yeah.
top of that, not only is it outdoors, but oftentimes it'll be on a pole on a roof, where you get a lot of heat, you get a lot of rain, you get there's a lot of stuff and this is just my own humbled opinion, I wouldn't trust an SMA connector outdoors unless it's at least in some type of NEMA enclosure.
Yeah. Okay. Next from Reza, which unit has RS-232 slash, I think you mean 485. We don't have 245 for connecting to RTUs. So any of our routers that has a -S would have that. It's not really pertaining to the ODU. The ODU is just more just enterprise level. But if you're looking at our industrial routers, anything that has a -S or any of our gateways would support RS-232 or 485. Okay, here's a good question from Reza. Since there's a shortage of chipset in universal market, do you have challenges as well for availability? So Ken, you can answer that. I know you like this question.
Yeah, so actually for right now, we don't have any problem with chipsets. Even during the really big shortage that happened from 2020 through like 2022, one of the benefits that InHand has is, we're the third largest industrial cellular manufacturer in the world. So I think last year we shipped like 600 or 650,000 cellular routers. So whenever shortages happen, yeah, we're I hate to make a comparison to the people that balled up toilet paper during COVID, but we have a very large amount of buying power from the chipset manufacturers, and even before that last massive shortage, we had purchased more than $20 million just in BOM for chipset components. So shortages in chipsets has not really been a challenge for us. It's actually been a boon. Our directional 4x4 antenna is not included. No, currently it comes with 4 Omni MIMO antennas, and then 2 I think it's as I mentioned before, they're limited to higher frequency Omni antennas. So you get
Ken, so I think his question is, are they not recommended? So
not recommended.
Yeah, so the reason why we don't usually recommend directional antennas, like it's not always bad, but it really depends on the use case. Omnidirectional is usually just better in sort of like a normal setting. Directional antennas obviously give you a better boost if you're in an area where the signal isn't the greatest, right? But usually in an outdoor setting, we would hope to think that omnidirection would be good enough to be able to pick up some sort of signal. But directional is just like a very situational. That's why our standard is usually omnidirectional. Can you run InHand in premise for the clients who want to have access to their out data? I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe so.
InHand offers some options for private installations, but that's more or less a customized solution. So if it's something of interest for you or for your client, feel free to talk with your InHand rep, and then we can go through and talk and see what would be required. I know we have done private installations of other cloud platforms in the past, because not everyone wants stuff running on AWS here. I know utilities are big fans of putting everything on their own servers. So again, it's something we've done in the past, and it's always an open option. We just have to talk about what were the requirements and the scope of the project.
Yeah, I know we could do it for device manager, but I think in cloud, the scope might be a little bit more difficult. So yeah, that's definitely a discussion we can have if that's a requirement you have. Sorry, Miss White, they have 6 antennas, not just 4. So it's 4 MIMO and then 2 dedicated 5G, right?
Yeah, to higher frequency 5G.
Yeah, so 4 MIMO and then 2 for 5G frequencies. How many users on the access point?
Yeah, ideally the access point is 20 to 30. So this device is intended to provide Wi-Fi for the ability to do configuration, remote configuration, if you need to connect to the device. Problem with your Ethernet, whatever, right? It's more about maintenance and support than it is about functioning as a primary AP.
Mm-hmm. Having an ER 805 and ODU, will that enable carrier redundancy with 0 downtime auto failover from one carrier to another. So it won't be zero downtime. We could get it very, very low. It's basically just sort of like how you normally would have one router as a failover option, but instead of a different router to a cellular, it would be
Well, I
from a
think
cellular.
Godwin, what he's referencing here is you have an 805,
which has a 5G module, and then you have an ODU, which has a 5G module. So you could literally be running two WANs at the same time rather than a traditional failover.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
He used the term auto failover, but yeah, you could have two pipes running at the same time, so there is no downtime.
Yeah. You're right. There might still be a little bit from a switch. So if one does go down and it needs to switch to the other one, it won't be zero downtime, but it'll be pretty much close to zero. So if you're on like a call, maybe it'll drop for a few seconds, then it'll reconnect. But
I would say if you're running the 805 in a load balancing mode rather than a failover, I mean, you shouldn't have to worry about a downtime.
Yeah. Any ODU for Canada? Bell, Rogers, TELUS. So at the moment, no. I believe Bell doesn't really have like any certification process. We work with we only work with Rogers and US Cellular. So I don't know if Bell or TELUS actually has a certification process. So you could try using it. Just make sure that the bands for the ODU that you get for currently we only have the NAVA, but make sure that the bands that the NAVA support are the ones that Bell or TELUS uses. But yeah, once we get all of our certifications done, then we will work with Rogers. The aggregated bandwidth comment slide said link failover. Please clarify where the 805 is truly aggregating the multiple WAN pipes and then likely needs head end to decouple those streams, or if it's a failover scenario, either or at any one time or simultaneous ability to pass traffic. Let me read it again.
Yeah, regarding that question, I think it's the slide mentions multiple options. So again, when you're looking at it from the 805 perspective, you can have multiple WANs enabled, but remember the 805 only comes with one cellular module. We don't do dual cellular modules on that. So whether it's you're utilizing the two WANs, one which is Ethernet, now that could be coming from an ODU outside, or it could be from a cable internet provider, right? And then essentially managing and balancing both of those WANs.
Yeah, so there is a load balancing mechanism. So basically what it does is it would just split up traffic between two different WAN sources. So no, it wouldn't be one at a time. So it could be either or. You could have it as a failover scenario where it will use one WAN and then it'll switch over to the other, or you could have load balancing where it will just split traffic between two WAN sources. I think that's what you're asking anyways. Is that load balancing with combining the ER805 and ODU? So no. So you could have load balancing by itself. The example we show with the 805 and the ODU is just adding a level of redundancy. But the 805 or the ODU by themselves have that load balancing built in where it could do it between the different sources. Do you have any units as EPP to test in-house? I'm not sure what EPP is.
I think he's referencing like engineering samples. Again, if you reach out to your localized InHand rep or partner, we do have some potential options for discounted or test units. Just reach out to them, and they're always our partners and reps are always happy to oblige.
All right. I think that's it for the questions. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to type it now, or you can always message Ken or me or whoever your InHand rep is.
All right. If there's no other questions, thank you all for attending. Much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed learning about our new ODU product, and hopefully many of you get a chance to test it and see it in action in the next few months. Thanks again for attending, and have a nice Wednesday, everyone.
Thanks, Ken. Bye. Bye, guys.